The round knife, arguably the most versatile tool in the Leathercrafter's toolbox. Those who like them, love them. Those who don't understand them though, tend to fall over at the size of them. In this video, I'm going to be going through the basics of how to keep your blade sharp through stropping so that it's always singing that same song, cutting that sweet leather. So this is the polishing block that I'm going to use. I'm using some green compound here, and also this is called a strop. Some people call it a strop. More accurately, a polishing block though. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take my round knife and I'm going to imagine dividing it up into three parts. So we have two side sections here, and then a middle portion here. Okay, so imagine drawing two imaginary lines, and that's going to divide up our three sections. So our side sections and our middle section. The traditional way of doing this on the block is to do one side, turn the blade over, and then swipe the other way, turn it back, swipe, swipe, almost like a figure of eight really. So to do that, I'm going to take my blade, I'm going to place it down on that imaginary line on one side, and I'm going to bring it onto the corner of the blade as I bring it across. I'm then going to turn the blade over. It again makes contact on that division point, and then I bring it across and I do the same thing, pulling it back onto the point. Okay, so it's this kind of motion. Now when I've done one side, I simply switch it over, and then I carry on doing the other side. You don't want to go too fast on this, otherwise you'll start taking chunks out of your polishing block. When you've done both sides, you know that these portions here are nice and sharp, but we haven't touched the center portion here. To do this, I'm going to get two fingers either side of the blade, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt it to one side, bring it across, bring it back down, tilt it to the other side, and then bring it across in a figure of eight. So I'm always drawing the blade away from the stropping block. The moment I push forwards with the blade, it will literally dig in. When I've done one side, I switch it over. Again, tilting one way, coming across, coming across. And that is the traditional way of sharpening a round knife. Now there's lots of different ways, but this is just a very popular old technique. Now the way I like to do it is a little bit different. I find it's very difficult to make sure as you're coming across and going back and you're doing any kind of speed, even this speed, which is very moderate, it's very difficult to maintain a consistent angle, say 15 degrees. It's much easier in my mind to focus on one angle, strop it up, switch over, do the other side, and make sure everything is exactly the same every time. So you don't have to worry about changing angles, and that just gives a more accurate polish. And it's much simpler for the beginner to do as well. So I'm just starting from that corner, or that division rather, moving on to the very corner, the fine cutting edge. So when I've done both sides, I can then start from one end here. I can go from that division across to the other division here, and all I'm doing is tilting as I come back. Okay, so I'm just doing this motion like that. You could essentially start from the other side, and it doesn't really matter, just going from one side to the other. And then when I've polished that side, I'm going to do the other side too. And I now know that I have a polished blade from one side to the other. If you have a very fine blade like this one here, this is a high-speed steel edition, so it's very small, very good for detail work. Has a very fine taper to it, very hard, tough steel, but very, very fine taper. Brilliant for detailed work. On this one, you just want to make sure that you keep a nice low angle. So I've almost got the ferrule pretty much touching the surface of this piece of leather here. So this is just a little bit of polishing compound on some hide. And I'm going from one corner to the center. It's only small. And then I can do the same on the other side. So I can essentially divide it up into 2 points. So that's just another way of doing it. So my recommendation is always choosing a technique where you can get a consistent angle to your strop, and that way you're not taking chunks out of the leather or whatever you're using for your polishing block, and you're maintaining a consistent angle which is going to give you a better cut. I'm taking a scrap piece of leather here. We can see that this knife cuts it just like pretty much it was paper. So that's the round knife, and that's how I polish.